Well, how's American Psycho going, Jack?
So bad news.
Okay.
I haven't finished it.
Well, this has taken you a while.
Yeah, I'm really struggling with it.
Okay. You just need to get on with it.
I know, but it's just honestly, it's like I love reading, and even your other suggestions like Fluke and stuff. Like as much as I didn't particularly enjoy that book, I didn't mind reading it. I'm really struggling with American Psycho.
What's making it a struggle?
I think it's the stuff I've said before. Like I get what they're doing, but it's boring me.
How far have you got since we last spoke?
Like probably like an extra chapter.
So I feel like you're just not really putting much of an effort into this.
No, but that's what I mean. That's to me, that's a bad sign. Like that's like say you stopped halfway through a movie for some reason, and you were like, "Oh, I'm going to watch that later."
Yeah.
And then you sort of every time you went to sit down and watch it, you were like, "I could, but I could do something else, and I actually kind of want to do that other thing instead." Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But sometimes
like I know I need
get
to
on with
finish
these
it, and
things.
I'm gonna make a very big effort to get it done for next episode because I need to. But it is honestly a real struggle at the moment.
All right.
I don't know why. I don't know why this particular book is.
I mean, it's a literary classic according to quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit like you know how you I'm trying to think of a good example. I know you've got some that you've said on the podcast of like Nameless when you were like I hate that there's like this whole element where they're trying to sort of pretend to be smart and throw all this stuff out. I think it's a little bit like that where the writing in this book is very much like look how clever I am for making you feel this way.
Yeah.
And I got that like quite quickly. I was like, oh, that's what they're doing. So then the fact that he's dragged it out for, half a book and I don't know. I think it's just making me be like, yeah, all right, I get it, dude. Just do something interesting with this book. Like I'm assuming that it probably does get better. Hopefully.
I honestly don't. Actually, here's the thing. It was like I said before, over a decade ago when I read it. I know. I don't recall really struggling with it. Like I found the chapters where he went on a lot about like his business cards or album reviews. Like they weren't the best, but I never kind of was just like because I read it a lot on the train. Is because I read a lot of books going to and from college because I had like an hour and a half train journey there and back. And that was one of my train books, so it was like, just get on with it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I've just realised though, so I haven't done that, but there is something I do want to review, Liam.
Okay.
Which is unusual. We don't usually do this, right?
Is it like a CD or something?
No, it's a podcast, but it's not a low podcast. It's a big bucks podcast.
Right. Okay. Not like ours.
Yeah, exactly. Just like us. It's the Adventure Zone podcast, which is the McElroy brothers who do My Brother and Me.
Yeah, you love them.
I love them. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But they 3 years ago they started a D&D podcast, and a few weeks ago they released their final episode of that story. They're continuing it on and doing more. Like they're going to start a whole new game with whole new characters in a different world. But just if anyone hasn't listened to it,
I haven't.
Honestly, I think you would genuinely enjoy it.
Yeah, but the thing is, if I'm going to spend my time listening to podcasts, I'd rather listen to someone that I can network with who,
Yeah, but my life isn't about doing work, Liam. I do enough work that I genuinely...
so do I, but I then put even more
Liam.
Time into doing
The Adventure
podcast
Zone
work.
is my escapism.
Well, that's all well and good, but I'm all about getting this successful.
Okay, anyway, so the story they started as the first game was them doing a sort of a canned adventure.
Yeah.
And one of the brother that DMs, Griffin, was saying, at some point I'm probably going to go off script and, try and make it a bit interesting, but I just wanted to have something that's guided for this first bit.
Yeah.
Since then, it evolved into one of the most amazing stories I've ever read, or heard, I guess, not read.
Yeah.
But, genuinely to the point where the last arc, which is probably about 8 episodes... I'm pretty positive in every single one, there was a moment where I was like, oh God, I could cry here because it's so emotional. And the final episode is just afterwards they do a Q&A episode where they, get up, they ask each other questions about what was certain bits.
Yeah.
And they brought up the fact that when they were recording the final episode, every single brother had to pause at a certain point in the recording because they were genuinely crying.
Right.
Because it was, which, sounds ridiculous, but then you think it's 3 years where they've been building these characters that they've been actually playing, getting into the mind of that character. So this having a final closure where that character either gets everything they wanted or not what they wanted, and having that moment of closure just was like emotionally draining on them. And I was like, that makes sense to me, and it's also, you know, how I would love our D&D to go. I don't think it ever will.
No, I still think it's a missed opportunity that it's not being recorded.
We're going to try and sort it out eventually and get something done, but I think for now, while we're still getting our feet, because I'm not super comfortable as the DM yet, I think we're all. I
think you're doing a fine job as DM.
I am, but there are bits where I catch myself and I'm like, I'm not explaining that well enough.
Hang on.
Do you know what I mean?
Let's not get too big-headed.
No, I'm saying I think I can DM. Like, I can come up with stuff when I need to, but occasionally I'll say something and I'm like, that's not been thought through well enough, or I haven't described this well enough. Do you know what I mean?
Give me an example.
So like in our last game where you guys visited the church?
The temple,
and I was trying to describe the outside, and then someone had to like double check something about it, and I was like, I was trying to get that across, but I hadn't done it properly.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Yeah,
I think I'm alright at coming up with characters quite quickly on the spot, because a couple of characters in the last session didn't exist until you happened to meet them, and I was like, oh, okay, this character is now a character.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting better at that, but that's what I mean. I feel like once we've got all that down and everyone's comfortable playing it, I think that's when we should start recording.
Okay, so this is like a warm-up almost.
Yeah, it's like us finding our feet in the D&D world.
Yeah. Have you got like...
I mean, I know you've already done a lot, but...
Have you got like a definitive like end goal for us to reach, where we could then just kind of put a lid on it and be like, that was the starter session, we're now kind of...
What, with new characters?
Not necessarily new characters, but just have you got like an end goal for us to reach, so you can just kind of cap that like campaign off and be like, well, you could carry on with the characters. But...
I don't think it would cap the campaign. I haven't got an end for the campaign particularly.
Okay.
Or well, I could.
Or not even for this storyline, you know? Do you know what I mean?
So there is. I know vaguely where this is leading, and like, I mean, you guys haven't even like really touched on where it's going, if you know what I mean. Like, it sort of came to me and I was like, oh, okay, that is what's happening and that's where it's going. You know, I don't know how you guys fit into it, so it's not even like a story that you guys are on. It's like, this is what's happening. At some point you're going to be tied into that story somewhere, and you'll make your own way through it or change it and all that stuff.
Okay.
So I guess there's the end of that, but I feel like that could be quite a way away. I don't super know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess we'll see. I imagine that I can probably find a place where, you know, at least an arc of the story would end, and then maybe that's the jumping on point for...
That's what I'm thinking, yeah. And then we can maybe make a judgment call there if each of us wants to carry on with our characters or try something new or whatever.
No, I think you should be stuck with these characters. I know, I get changing characters. My issue with that becomes if someone constantly does it, then you're losing an element of the story, because the party is meant to grow as a party, and maybe that isn't working with your characters and you do want to change, and that's fine. But I feel like, you know, if every arc everyone's changing and we're getting new characters,
I think it should be a player decision, so players can choose whether to keep or not.
No, definitely. I'm not going to force you to stay as a character. But do you know what I mean? Like, at some point it becomes an issue when someone is always a new character. Do you know what I mean?
No, I get that. But I think there's probably, depending on how long the campaigns last, there's probably a way of doing it where it doesn't feel like it's someone constantly changing character.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying you couldn't do it. I think the thing is, it's a player and DM decision. Like, if someone's like, I don't want to be this character, obviously I'm going to let them change, and I wouldn't force someone to play it. But you know,
that's the other thing is, I think it makes sense to have these points where you can have that discussion, as opposed to, I guess what you don't want is to plan a load of stuff with all the characters, and then like midway through that, someone's like, oh, I kind of fancy changing my character now. It would make more sense to have like points where that discussion could happen.
I mean, I know we for the last 3 episodes now we've talked about D&D, and I promise listeners we will eventually stop talking about it, but it's quite, you know, it's a new thing that we're doing, so I guess it's, you know, fresh on our minds sort of thing. But like, the way I envision it is almost like, this isn't necessarily how ours is going, but the way I sort of try and picture D&D itself is there are the story arcs that are the world.
Yeah.
So what you guys are doing at the moment is a world story arc, as in that's something that all 3 of you are sort of tied to at the moment. You're doing something and you're working together to do this thing in the world.
Yeah.
And then there are character story arcs, which I've got a few that I know are going to happen at some point. I don't know when.
Yeah.
So those ones, if someone changes character, I just drop them and I go, cool, that character story arcs aren't going to happen. That's fine.
Yeah.
But do you know what I mean? Like there are things. So again, someone dropping a character doesn't mess me up because there are the world story arcs that wouldn't change anyway because this thing is happening in the world. Now your new character has to deal with it.
Cool. What would you give Adventure Zone out of 5?
Honestly, 5 out of 5.
Fair enough.
It's my favourite podcast that I've ever listened to.
Have you done anything else that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's me done for
okay.
not catching up with, for cinema thing.
Yeah, stuff.